See? Okay, there we go. What happened? Where is it not going live? Oh, it's not going live on YouTube. Okay, so we are live, but we're not live on YouTube.
Hey.
So awesome. We're going to kind of sidetrack things here. That's unfortunate. We are having a StreamYard issue and an error occurred. Please wait to go live, blah, blah, blah. So I guess we're just going to cue the intro here and we're going to go live on Twitter alone. All right, let's try this again, boys. I was looking the other day in between my old Mad Science Lab show and FFU. I'm about 800 episodes in. Don't think I've ever had that happen before where I've hit go live and it's been like, no, we're not going live. Fuck you. I don't care what you have to say. So I believe it looks like we're officially streaming live to you, those of you on Twitter. So hello. I don't know if anyone can watch us on YouTube, but I guess we're going to keep going with this. Welcome to the Fantasy Football Universe. We are back with another episode of the Ben Sinnott Love Hour. I mean, mock draft. Mock draft. That's not what we're here for. We're not here just to talk Ben Sinnott for an hour again. I've got my usual co-host with me, Jeremy Schulman at FF_Rebel. We are joined today by Andrew Cooper, Coop Fiasco. Hey, Coop, how's it going? Long time no see.
Yeah, good to see you, man. And I'm down. You know me. I'm down to talk tight end. So if you want to talk Ben Sinnott for an hour, I'm in. YouTube or not. And it looks like the people found the stream on Twitter. We see Trey trickling in. So get your comments in on Twitter at least if we can't go live on YouTube.
Yeah, it's funny. I did see your episode the other day on your talking about tight end. We will be talking about actual tight ends this time, not like on Yvette. It was Yvette.
That was Yvette's dude. Yeah, she's a riot, dude.
Yeah, she is. I don't think I've been on. I met her at the expo. I think that's the first time I met you was at the expo.
Yeah.
Walking into the hotel lobby our first day, and I'm like, I wonder who the first person I'm gonna. Oh fuck, that's Coop right there. I'm like, holy shit.
Boom shakalaka. Yeah, I love the expo, man. You got to go to the expo and collect your high fives, man. And I think more and more since I've been going, it's gotten better and better for fans. And and the thing is, if you are plugged in on Twitter and you're plugged in on Reddit and you're actually going to these events, especially, to me, you're more than a fan. You know what I mean? Like there's levels of, fantasy where it's like there's a couple guys in your league that are still like trying to draft Larry Fitz. Like there's plenty of casual gamers out there. And then there are the people that plugged in and care and are actually, if you comment on Twitter or on Reddit, you're in the top like 5 or 10% of people engaged. So to me, those people, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to be a Toronto Dave like mega user to be like considered within the, you know what I mean? There's so many industry adjacent people that come out to the expo, have fun. There's something for you to do out there, no question, even if you're not writing articles and making videos and stuff,
Yeah, it was awesome. It was my first year going last year. I got there before everyone because I drove in from Detroit area. So I was killing time before anyone came off and I had to go pick them up at the airport. So I'm like, I hear all of this about the DoubleTree. So I'm like, I'm going to see what the DoubleTree looks like. I'm like, I'm terrified. I've never met anyone. I'm, still relatively new. I'm like, I hope I don't see anyone. I'm terrified. If I walk in, who walks right into me? It's Marcus Grant and Scott Fish. I'm like, holy shit. What the hell is going on? I was like, I'm going to go. No, I just went and hit. I did not say a word to them. It was absolutely terrified. I did not say a word. I don't think I met either of them till later that night when I was fairly well served. So.
Yeah, and the thing is, those are the two of the nicest dudes ever. So that's the thing. It's so approachable to both of them, man. I love those two guys, man. Just great dudes. And there's a lot of great dudes out there, man. I see another expo, like another great dude of speaking of the expo, Derek Brown, dude. I got to talk to him for the first time at the expo this year, man. And I mean, it's like a guy like that. The first time you talk to him, it's like talking to an old friend. He's one of those guys. So shout out Expo, man. Great times.
I think there was only everyone was great. There was only one person I think where I approached them and they were a little bit standoffish, but everyone else was real laid back. Yeah. Debro was so easy to meet. Like he didn't even remember me the next day. It was like, he messaged me. Sorry, I didn't get to meet you. And he's like, I met you an hour ago, Debro, in the lobby. So
well, there's a lot of people, so I don't, it's the way.
No, take pictures. A lot of us are well served and won't remember meeting you. So
name tags are clutch.
All right, before we get it, yes, they are. I don't know how many times I went up and had to turn around the name tag. It's like, who are you? I know your face, but before I get into this, you got anything you want to promote? Tell everyone where they can find you.
Yeah, for sure. I do. I'm doing two shows a week. This time of year, we get up to basically daily, close to the two actual drafts over the summer. So on Wednesdays and Friday, you can catch me 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern time. All my stuff's over at fantasyalarm.com. I also pop in on SiriusXM every once in a while. So I'll be on coming up with the draft here. I'll be on from 6 to 8 and 5 to 7 on the Thursday and Friday, leading into the NFL draft days over on SiriusXM channel 87, hanging out with Howard Bender. So that's what I got coming up for the most part. We're also doing a best ball draft guide over on Fantasy Alarm if you want to check that out. But that's what's popping right now.
Awesome. How about you, Jeremy? You got anything you want to promote?
Nope. I'm ready.
That's the end of our show, sir.
other than Ben Sinnott, no, I'm good. We did, Coop was saying earlier, I can talk tight ends for an hour. We talked tight ends for about an hour, me and Jesse Moeller, and we talked for about 55 minutes about Ben Sinnott. So, I could go on all day too.
I think we're going to fire this bad boy up. My buddy from my home league that you just joined is the 101. We will see if he's on or not. He said he's hardcore right now into NBA 2K, grinding away at that. So hopefully he set his alarm to get notifications. There we go. He did. He put down the controller. Come on, Trey. Get at it, buddy. So
NBA 2K, those games are tough, man. I gotta say, I'm definitely more of an NHL guy. Even though I'm a football, it's so funny. I'm a football guy all day long. So you'd think I'd be a Madden guy. NHL, that's the game for me.
Me too. I started with hockey before fantasy football. So for me, it's that. But all the EA games, they're such a grind now and a cash grab that they just want you to pay for everything. So we are just going to keep making our picks here. And then once we get to the end of the round, we'll kind of dissect it. Things going pretty quick. We've got me on the clock. I'm going to do what I always do and go JJ, despite the fact Jaden Daniels was left on the board for Coop. I assume that will be your pick, but
yeah, it should be. It should be, but
Brock Bowers.
I kind of want to take Bowers. I'm gonna take Jaden Daniels because I'm supposed to.
No, do whatever you want, man. I'm just anti-tight end in the first round of rookie drafts. That's what it is for me.
I can get to that. I will take Jaden Daniels. So I took this spot in the draft assuming that Daniels would be gone and that my pick would be Brock Bowers or Roma Dunze, in which case I would take Bowers in this format. Typically, I have been against taking tight ends in the first round, and I've been against taking them in redraft rookie tight ends, but there are unique circumstances where I will do it. I wrote an entire article on this, where and when to go for these guys. And basically if they have a path, if they are elite, talented guys, they have the draft capital and they have a path of being a top 2 target on the team, which is incredibly rare, then we can take them. Evan Engram, Kyle Pitts, and then last year, Laporta and Kincaid were the only real examples since basically Jeremy Shockey that I've had for that. So it's very rare, but in this case, I'm willing to do it. In this case.
No, it's absolutely fair. I just, like I said, I'm a JJ McCarthy guy. That's why I went for him. I don't like tight end first round. That's it for me. I'm just stubborn and stuck in my ways.
Yeah, you guys go.
Is there a place where like Brock Bowers could land in the draft where you would be really concerned about taking him at the 108 where he seems to be falling in a lot of these drafts?
So for redraft, for dynasty, I'm not as worried about it because I trust the talent. If he were to slide, let's say that he ends up being the guy that the cameras are on him and they're like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Every once in a while we have a Will Levis or an Aaron Rodgers that's like, oh man, what's going on? If he somehow slides in the second round, or God forbid another 10 end goes before him, then we start saying, okay, wait a second, this guy maybe is a little undersized and maybe they don't believe in him the way that the analysts do. But beyond that, I'm probably going to be in. The thing is, for short-term production, if he lands in certain spots, he is not going to have the redraft upside of the short-term upside. For instance, if he were to land with a team with 2 locked-in top 2 targets, that would be problematic for his upside. The number one example being the Miami Dolphins, right? If he goes to the Dolphins where Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle are no doubt going to get more targets than him, it's going to be difficult for him to get the 90 targets or 10-plus touchdowns that we need to have top 5 upside. So those are the short-term concerns, but long-term I have no concerns. The guy's just a super mega star.
All right, I'm going to do a quick recap here of the first round. We see the consensus. It looks like consensus 8, just in a little bit different order. I always throw that throw that off because JJ McCarthy is my guy, or I punt Bowers. But we started with Caleb Williams. Then we went Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Drake May, Roma Dunze, McCarthy, Daniels, Bowers, Xavier Worthy, Michael Penix Jr., Brian Thomas Jr., and Adonai Mitchell. So the interesting ones here, Brian Thomas, we got a lot of flack in our last one. For some reason, he fell to the 208 last time. And I'm not sure why, because I know for me, I didn't notice he was still on the board. And that's what happened there. I'm just making a quick change here. We are not supposed to be doing this in a snake draft. It's a rookie draft. So I apologize to those of you who just got screwed out of a pick, but sorry, that's how we do things. Anyway, sorry, Brian Thomas Jr., I think this is where he should be going, but I don't know, for some reason last time he slipped. And I know this one's an auto pick, but for the second straight time, Michael Penix Jr. has found his way into the end of the first round for us. What do you guys think here of, I don't know, Penix going in the first round? I'm out at that price. I don't know about you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'll weigh in on it. And my opinion is this regarding doing drafts now, is that I will lean into the format. I'll lean into, honestly, consensus to some degree, because we don't know the landing spot and the draft capital and all those things. And again, people don't like to hear this during this time of year, especially the Devy guys and the people that really love and trust their process. But for me, when it comes to dynasty, I and the people that I respect do care about draft capital. You look at JJ Zacharyson, his number one part of his model is draft capital. You look at Dwayne McFarland, 60% of his formula goes to draft capital. It is the number one indicator of future success. So if I'm doing a draft like this, and we get through the first tier of consensus guys, Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Odunze, Bowers, big-time quarterbacks, I look at it and I start saying to myself, okay, do I want to take a stab on the next tier of guys? Or in a super flex draft, do I want to take the quarterback that I believe is the surefire number 5? And I personally, I would say surefire, but I have Penix as 5. So I don't mind it. I'm not sure I would take him in the first round. Jeremy, would you take him here, or would you take a stab on tier 2 of the wide receiver?
Yeah, I need to, for the top 4, no problem. Like Aaron was mentioning, JJ McCarthy maybe seems a little high now. But I think if he gets that top 10, top 15 draft capital, he's absolutely in the top 6, 7 picks, locked in. Outside of those top 4 quarterbacks, no, I don't really want anything to do with Penix or Nix at the back end of the first. I want to take a shot on one of these wide receivers, or even the top drafted running back in the class coming in there, just to lock in that production over the quarterbacks.
So go ahead.
I was trying to throw some at you. I've been doing a little study looking at, because we always look at first round QBs, second round QBs. I've been looking at the number that a QB goes off the board, right? Mm-hmm. So QB 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What I did is I took the last 25 years and the top 12 quarterbacks from each year, so 300 quarterbacks, and I looked at what percentage of the QB1 seasons those guys account for. QB1 off the board accounted for 28% of those seasons. The second QB, 23%. The third QB, 8%. Then it goes 6, 5. The sixth quarterback off the board historically has been brutal. The guys drafted 6. Basically, it's Russell Wilson and then nobody. The 3 best fantasy producers as the 6th quarterback off the board are Russell Wilson,
Dak, and Purdy.
No, because they were drafted even after 6.
Oh, okay.
So as the exact number 6, it's Russell Wilson, Colin Kaepernick, and number 3 is Logan Thomas, who is drafted as a quarterback by the Cardinals. Yeah. So and then the hit rates get even worse as you go on.
Yeah.
Obviously, certain QB8 is skewed because Tom Brady was QB8. So that's 19 QB1 seasons that get thrown into the pot.
That'll do it.
Right. And same thing with, honestly, at QB2, there's a couple guys that account for a huge percentage of those. Like Drew Brees was a second round pick, but he was the second quarterback off the board. So it's but looking at it, the first 2 QBs off the board, historically, the hit rates are just so much higher. Sorry to go on the rant but I recently did a pretty elaborate study on that.
No, but I agree with you. But so the guy who made that pick is in my home league. It's a coworker. He said he got back with 3 seconds left. That wasn't going to be his pick. So he didn't want it. But I've noticed this has happened in a few other leagues recently, and even mocks that I've seen where he's going at the end of the first round. Do you think maybe, whether it be I've seen Penix, I've seen Nix, I've seen Rattler even go. You think possibly this is an overreaction to everyone just saying, well, shit, Brock Purdy did it. Why do I have to take, I'm just going to overdraft quarterback now.
That's the worst possible thing that can happen.
No, I know.
Is you buy a $1 scratch ticket and hit for $1,000 because now in your mind you're like, dude, I got it all figured out. I'm just gonna buy $1 scratchies. You know what I mean? Whereas the boring answer of the first round picks are 50-50 shots is playing roulette. Now, what I will say in this study, what I've found is that our ability from year to year to judge the draft classes is not great. Where some years you'll have 5 great quarterbacks, and in some years you'll have none. So, like, unless you can take a Andrew Luck and throw him into the mix, you have no idea if these other guys suck or not. Like there was so much hype for Jameis Winston and Marcus Mariota in that class, but it turns out that had there been an Andrew Luck in there, we might have looked at it and said, "Wait a second, there's only one good guy, and all these guys stink."
It's all relative.
Right, which in another class, which was the class with Jalen Hurts and all those guys, Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. Well, it turns out that Jalen Hurts, as the 5th quarterback off the board, he was just with a bunch of really good quarterbacks. So it turns out that he's actually still awesome. So in this class, I will look at, especially if JJ McCarthy goes high, I will give some extra points to the guy that goes 5th. But the guys that go after him, so say Penix goes 5th, I'll probably be writing off a lot of the Bo Nixes and the Spencer Rattles. Whoever goes 5th. And again, if JJ McCarthy slides pretty far, then I'll still consider McCarthy if he's 4, but I'll be a little more, you know what I mean? You have to consider the narrative of the draft.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, we can call that the Kenny Pickett effect. But like I said, that the reason draft capital is so important is because, for the fantasy community, we don't necessarily know a lot of the behind the scenes stuff for this. And the NFL tells us how they feel about these quarterbacks. Right. I remember going into mock drafts before that draft class. Malik Willis was going as the 101 or 102. Then that entire class fell. You know what? The entire class fell because the NFL GMs looked and said, these guys fucking suck. And they did. So if that happens, I'm going to listen to the GMs because I know they get shit wrong. They get the Zach Wilsons wrong and Trey Lances. But when they say, oh, we're all out on these guys, there's typically a reason for it. So I tend to play the odds and go with the draft capital because it hits more than it misses.
And 3rd round is another round where it's oddly a killer. Because like people want to say, oh, well, what about Purdy? What about Brady? What about even Kirk and Dak in the 4th round or whatever? But those are, outliers, of course. In just the 3rd round, alone, the best quarterback drafted the last 25 years in fantasy football is Russell Wilson. And he's been good. He's had 9 first, QB1 seasons. Guess who's number 2? And if you guys were to guess this, I would be absolutely flabbergasted.
A 3rd round quarterback.
He's not currently in the league. He think pick sixes. That's what he's most famous for.
Jay Cutler.
Not bad. But Cutler's much better than this guy. It was Matt Schaub. Statistically, the 2nd best 3rd round QB last 25 years.
I wasn't going that low. Oh my god.
Yeah. It's like Matt Schaub or Chris Chandler. So
really?
And you think when you add up all those guys, Desmond Ritters and Malik Willis's and Davis Mills, there's a lot of guys that had value, and if you just cashed out, you'd be feeling a lot better today. Yeah. So just be very careful with quarterback. If they go early, good. If they don't, just forget about all your preconceived notions.
But that's a big thing, even in my own prospect model for quarterbacks. There's even 1st round itself is a big difference. The quarterbacks who went top 10 versus the ones who just went 1st round, it's a big drop. That it's not, say there's 4 of them who go in the top 10 like they're expected, and then one goes somewhere in 18. I'm going to ding the quarterback going 18, although it might be a more favorable landing spot. But historically speaking, the hit rate is much lower outside the top 10.
Fact. Yeah. And I'll tell you this, based on, again, if it boils back to that, either they're all good and or they're all not good for the most part. Where you're really trying to thread a needle is by saying, like, let's say you really like JJ McCarthy, which you do. Let's say he falls to QB. The other guys go 1, 2, 3, and he falls to QB 20. For you to say this guy's good and these other guys are terrible, that is really trying to thread the needle. A much more realistic argument is that they're all really good and that this guy only fell because they were just other good options. You know what I mean? So it's really is interesting the more you look at it that like.
Well, and in that sense, say who's a decent team who needs a quarterback that picks in that range? Minnesota's later than that, right?
Yeah, Minnesota's 11. So
Okay, but so we'll say Minnesota. So say the first three go top three, and JJ falls to Minnesota. The only thing I like in that situation is I far prefer Minnesota as a landing spot than I do New England or Washington. That would be my only saving grace there on the McCarthy bandwagon. But you're right; it's a completely different story.
Well, the thing about landing spot, and again, landing spot for me is more of a redraft thing and a short-term thing. Which, let me correct that. Landing spot matters more at certain positions than others. It's crucial at running back, especially if a first-round pick running back, you have the fifth-year option. Like that running back could be outside the age apex the time he hits his second contract. If come May, early May 5th, I think it is, if the Steelers pick up the fifth-year option on Najee Harris, he won't be a free agent for the first time until he's like 28 years.
For me, I don't think with respect to quarterback, I don't see the landing spot as a positive. It can only be an even or a negative for me. I don't care where they land, but there are certain spots like with Zach Wilson with the Jets. There's certain spots where they just go and they look like this is going to kill this guy. It's going to kill his confidence. He's going to start off. And there's certain landing spots. And I think New England could be one, maybe, I don't know, Washington, bad coaching staffs, even like you've seen with Trevor Lawrence first year. That was such a shit show, it may have ruined him. So I think the landing spot for quarterback can just be a negative. Other than that, I don't really factor it in all that much.
Well,
go ahead, Jeremy.
I was just going to say to your point earlier about running backs, right? The idea that these days, it's such a committee-based approach from NFL teams. You don't have those workhorses anymore. So landing spot really does matter, right? If we're looking at if the Cowboys or the Chargers draft a running back, those backs are going to skyrocket up the board, up our rookie draft boards. Meanwhile, if you get a back that goes to Baltimore, right, in the third round, we're not going to care about that guy. So, the committee approach is one thing, but really based on position, when you're talking about running back, you really want the guy who's going to see the workload. When you're talking about quarterback or tight end, as we talked about, right, we're more willing to wait on these guys because they tend to retain their value.
Opportunity over skill at running back.
I just leaned into that with my pick, where I took the exact two landing spots you're thinking of. If he was available, I would have taken Jonathan Brooks. Now, Jesse Moeller, who's in this draft, is obviously a very sharp fantasy gamer, right?
Not really.
I think he is. I think
he's on our show, so no, not really.
Yeah. I know. That's one of my biggest rules of Twitter is you're allowed to be mean, but only to your friends.
Oh yeah, that's all I mean to is my friends. But
exactly, and it applies to real life too. It's like
exactly. That's how you know I love you. If I don't insult you, it means I don't like you. I just ignore you. But are you assuming Corum's going to the Chargers? Is that what you're saying?
I'm looking at, so within this tier, he was the last guy available of this tier. I usually end up taking like Marshawn Lloyd here because he usually falls, but Doug probably saw Derek Brown in the chat and knew that we were all going to be on the Marshawn Lloyd train here with the number one fan hanging out early in the show. But you look at Jesse Moeller, Jonathan Brooks. The narrative on him that a lot of people are talking about is you guys have heard the information about his doctor, right? The knee doctor. It's
he's the Dallas Cowboys guy.
Dallas Cowboys doctor, yes. So if the Cowboys draft Jonathan Brooks, the guy that did his ACL surgery is Dan Cooper, no relation, that is the Dallas Cowboys doctor. So if they draft him, right, then if so facto, the people with the best information on this knee injury are in. If they don't draft him, that's a pretty big red flag. And I look at Blake Corum the same way. Like, obviously, there's a narrative where Harbaugh reaches for him. It could be a mistake because he's drafting his own guys. We saw that with Joe Brady drafting Terrace Marshall, maybe reached a little bit for his own guy from college, but he's going to get opportunity right away. His value is going to skyrocket right away. If I'm forced to draft now before the NFL draft, which I don't like doing, I will make those bets in these rounds and say to myself, I could profit right away if this guy goes to that spot. So that's my thought process here. You know what I mean? But again, I'm a guy that prefers, I don't play a lot of Devy. I don't care about being first. It's like, so I don't worry so much about planting flags and stuff like that.
Jesse has responded to me with a nice little suck it gift. That's very kind of him. My worry here is Corum is if he doesn't go to the Chargers, I don't know if he can succeed because in college, like I'm a Michigan fan. Don't get me wrong. I love him. he was used like as a short yardage goal line back.
Right.
I'm not sure, with a great offensive line. I'm not sure if he goes to the NFL, if he doesn't have a dominant offensive line, I don't think he's big enough and strong enough for that role. And unless he's got Jim Harbaugh force feeding him into that role because he loves him so much, I don't know if any other team's going to look at him and be like, this is my goal line hammer right here. So
there are some nightmare landing spots, even if they do think he's a goal line hammer. Because if you're the goal line hammer, you need a good offense. Like LeGarrette Blount scored 18 touchdowns because he was playing with Tom Brady when he only caught 7 passes. And in PPR, he was still like he scored 18 touchdowns. He was still like the RB7. He wasn't even like RB2. Like Jamal Williams, he scored 18 touchdowns. He wasn't. Where did he finish in PPR? He wasn't even a top 5 back. So like you need that. What happens if Blake Corum goes to a team like the Bills, where they have a pass
goal line hammer though, right?
He would be. They already have they have Josh Allen, who scored 15 touchdowns last year, 15 rushing touchdowns, and they have James White, who catches passes. I mean, like it would be a nightmare. And again, that's why my main advice here is don't do your rookie draft before the NFL.
Absolutely,
you're stacking too much randomness on top of random.
Well, like I said, the first dynasty league I ever did, we did the rookie draft, both drafts before the NFL draft, and someone took Malik Willis as the 101 before the draft, only to see him go the 5th. So
yeah, we need what this industry needs, man. And we're actually, I want to give you a little spoiler. We're doing a little something along these lines, partnering with the Scott Fish Bowl and Fantasy Cares. This is the first time I talked about it on the show. So a little.
Spoiler.
A little spoiler, a little exclusive that we're partnering with the Scott Fish Bowl, Fantasy Cares, and Reddit to do a little draft challenge and giving away Scott Fish Bowl invites, the whole deal. But we need like some sort of fantasy specific challenge for the draft to let people get their, get their takes out and get rewarded for it. You know what I mean? Because right now it's all mock drafts.
Yeah.
It's like, the fantasy industry, like I don't care about. I won't say I care where Joe Alt goes, but there's a lot of like defensive players and stuff there where it's like predicting that doesn't matter to us. We need some sort of like fantasy mock draft challenge that's just fantasy relevant players. What do you think?
I think you're the man to do it because you're the only fantasy analyst who's solved the mystery of Reddit. I think the rest of us don't know what the hell we're doing on there. So.
Well, that contest is going to be a little more friendly. That one's going to be more friendly. It's just kind of like predicting some stuff. I'm thinking about doing something where it's like, okay, you prove you can predict the order that these running backs and wide receivers get drafted.
I think my work, one of my buddies at work does something like that where we print up the sheet and, you have to predict all 32 and we some props and stuff like that, some games. But I personally am offended about nobody cares about the IDP. As the resident IDP specialist, I do care very much about that.
I apologize.
Doing that.
Apologize.
Just insulted 2% of our audience,
No, that's fair. You know why I'm the number 2 IDP ranker? Because there's nobody else who cares enough to go against me. So.
It's you against Gary Davenport and Jordan Loop every year. And Iggy too. Iggy. There's a lot of good IDP guys out there. Shout out IDP. But I'm just saying, like, for a mass contest, like instead of like just picking the 32 spots, how about you come out and you pick the top 5, the order that the top 5 quarterbacks, top 5 tight ends, top 10 running backs, top 15 wide receivers. Let's see who can do the best. Let's see who can do the best at that, even if you don't, necessarily think that's the fantasy relevance of them. And we'll see who's plugged in. You know what I mean? Be nice, and then you'd have less people fighting to have their drafts before the NFL draft so they can plant their flags to the mantle of the earth, in advance just to showboat. It's like there's too much of that going on.
Yeah, there is. Sign me up, I'm in. Let's recap quickly so we can get this started. The 201, Keon Coleman, followed by Trey Benson, Ladd McConkey, Marshawn Lloyd, Jonathan Brooks, Jalen Wright, Blake Corum, Troy Franklin, Ricky Pearsall, Jatavian Sanders, Malachi Corley, and Bo Nix to close it out. If Debro is still in the chat, his guy is still on the board. Jermaine Burton. This was a guy I've been recently redoing my my little preview there for him because I was not really that high on him. I wasn't even taking him in the 3rd round, and Debro, I think, took him at 204 last week. So clearly there is something I missed, but I guess let's fire this bad boy right back up here and get into the 3rd round.
Looks like I scared everybody with all that QB6 talk off the board because nobody wanted to take Bo Nix.
Nix went and then nothing.
He was the QB6. So once Penix went,
question for you here, Coop, with Jatavian Sanders here at the 210. Is he your tight end too? Are you scared off at all the offseason, combine, poor performance, that sort of stuff, or is he locked in for you?
Again, right now I have a group of guys that could be the tight end too, which includes Ben Sinnott. Not just pandering to the show. I see you guys over there. Yeah. Not just pandering to the show. It also includes Jaheim Bell. Jaheim Bell is a guy who, like, people say he's undersized. He's 1 inch and 2 pounds smaller than everyone's Lord and Savior, Brock Bowers. He has bigger hands. He has a bigger arm length, wider wingspan, but 1 inch shorter. So this guy is too small. I don't know. But yeah, Jatavian Sanders, to me, if he ran a 4.6 flat or below, then he would be locked in as my tight end too. And that's because at tight end, compared to many other positions, long speed is actually incredibly important, right? With other positions, the 40 is overrated. I think with tight end, it's actually underrated because with a lot of these guys, the ability to break out long chunk plays is the big difference maker between all the guys that are the third target on their team. There's a reason that George Kittle can still be productive as a third target, and that's because he runs a 4.52. And he has more 40-plus yard plays than any tight end, including Travis Kelce, and nobody's even close to those two guys. No other tight end has multiple 70-yard touchdowns. Like he has an 80-yard touchdown, right? Look at Jake Ferguson last year, where he had 68 targets for like 700 yards versus rookie Kyle Pitts, where he had pretty much the same number of targets and over 1,000 yards. It's like the ability to break off big chunk plays is the big difference maker for these guys. And Jatavian Sanders, unfortunately, has everything but that. Like his profile is like a Zach Ertz profile. Incredible hands. He didn't drop a single pass last year. He got 67 targets, didn't drop a single one, right? Like he's like Zach Ertz, where he can get open, he can catch the ball, but he's never going to turn a 30-yard gain into a 70-yard gain because he doesn't have the prerequisite speed. So he needs to get peppered with targets. He needs to be a top 2 target on the team. It's what's plagued Hunter Henry. It's what's plagued Zach Ertz. If I asked you right now, how many 1,000-yard seasons does Zach Ertz have?
One? None?
One.
Yeah.
He had one at 28 years old. He needed 156 targets to get.
Wow.
Yes. Wow. Because he run like a 4.74. So it's like that's the difference maker. Is that like if you have that speed, it's just a little extra something. For me, if he's the second tight end off the board and goes to like if Jatavian Sanders gets picked by the Chargers in the second round as the second tight end off the board, he's tight end 2 for me. But we have to see where it all shakes out.
It's amazing, though, how subjective some of these measurables are. I don't remember who wrote it, and I don't remember who the 2 tight ends were, but they compared they were 2 separate write-ups, and the first player was big and strong and fast, and the second player was too slow and too small. He had the exact same 40 time, the exact same weight, and was like a half an inch shorter. So it's amazing how in one write-up, you're big, fast, and strong, and then the exact same everything is suddenly too slow and too small. It's like, what the hell are we doing? It's a quarter of an inch, really?
These thresholds too are just like arbitrary, right? We've like decided that like, let's look at these thresholds and then they don't correlate, but let's look at, these thresholds. Oh, they do correlate. Now let's make it the standard. And I think, there's no wiggle room, like you were saying.
Confirmation bias is what it is.
It's so funny how that happens. Like somebody said on Reddit for the longest time, somebody was like, if you don't have 425 yards as a rookie, then you're toast. And I went back and looked at it, and they basically set that because it's exactly the number of yards Chris Godwin had. Yeah, and they just need to have an excuse of why Chris Godwin could still be good.
Confirmation bias.
Yeah, so you had to do it. So real quick, while we're on tight ends here, I'll talk about the guy I took, Jaheim Bell, and I just mentioned one inch shorter. Now, guys like Jaheim Bell, basically, to me, the comps for him, he's basically a slower version of Evan Engram, but also a slightly slower version of Chigakonkwa. And what you run into with guys like this is he needs to be drafted into a spot where he can be the best slot wide receiver on the team.
Right.
That's it. Because if he's not the best, then he'll become a rotational player, and then he's just another Cameron Brate or Anthony Ferkser or there's Kylan Granson. Like there's a ton of these guys that just kind of play. If he can be the best slot wide receiver on the team, or as good as the other slot wide receivers, then he can play a full snap share. That's Mark Andrews, plays 85% of the snaps. Evan Engram, they're basically slot wide receivers that are better blockers than every slot wide receiver in the league. Like you say Evan Engram sucks at blocking. he plays slot wide receiver. He's a better blocker than Tyler Boyd, right? Like that's the difference. So like Jaheim Bell, that's his path, but the floor is bad. And,
I've just heard on that blocking point. I've heard concerns in the Reddit streets and the Twitter streets, right? Nothing serious from analysts, but some of these guys like Bell or Sinat, who are good blockers, could end up in like a weird hybrid fullback H-back role where they're just primarily utilized as blockers. Now, I know we like that because at least they're on the field, but like, is that a concern for you that these guys aren't going to be in the pass game involved enough?
Yeah, it happens, man. It happens. And I'll give you an example of one guy that's stuck there right now is Tommy Tremble.
Yeah.
You don't, and the problem is we have to look at snaps where you're a legitimate. Oh, very nice. Good job, everybody.
I hate when Sleeper takes the remaining board off. So we can't even say, well, here's who fell that should know. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, we can still do that. We got a good idea who is out there. But basically you got to look at snaps. And again, this has been a huge thing that one of the main reasons that I kind of got on the scene as a tight end analyst years ago was nobody was looking at pass blocking them, right? Mm-hmm. They were just looking at this guy plays the whole game. Why isn't he producing? Well, he's pass blocking on 25% of his pass plays. So, he's not running. He might as well be off the field. Sure. And the same goes for a guy like Tommy Tremble, where when he gets motioned into the back as a fullback, he's not even as a fullback, sometimes just as an H-back, he's now no longer a route runner, right? And all those snaps are taken away. Chris Cooley was a guy, as an example, going way back. And then there was a guy for the Bengals named Carter, I forget it, that kind of fell in the same mold, and that can be problematic. So it is scary for Jaheim Bell and Ben Sinnott that they could end up that type of guy. Cameron Brate's the gold standard of a guy who he played for so many years. He's rich. He went to Harvard. Like, he's doing great, but he just never was quite the guy,
I always just worry too about the injuries with that role. Like, you look at George Kittle, how many of those injuries that he suffers are because he's in there because he's such a good blocker, and I don't get points for blocks, so that always worries me. But
that's true. Dallas Goedert too. Goedert's gotten hurt virtually every year. Like, when you get in that mix, crazy things happen. Look at Tank Dell last year. Like, that injury was he was just in the pile as a 165-pound player at the goal line when he should never have been. And now he doesn't have to be with Nico Collins and Stephon Diggs, but like, bad things happen in there. You get rolled up on, and it's a huge problem.
Let's wrap up the third round here as we've concluded. We start off with Braylon Allen. Then we have Roman Wilson, Xavier Legette, Javon Baker, who I love there. Jesse took Jalen McMillan. I know he prefers him over his teammate Polk. I went with Jermaine Burton. That was merely me trusting that D-Bro knows more about this shit than I do. You went with Jaheim Bell, and you just told us why. Then we have Tyrone Tracy, who is who's that? Is that one Purdue? I always forget where he went. Running back Purdue. He's been one of those guys who's caught on as of late. I don't remember what it is he did. Maybe he was good at the combine, but he's getting.
You got to be careful with those Purdue guys at the combine because they tell the crowd like not to cheer, but they're all cheering for the Boilermakers out there because it's like right around the corner, right?
Yeah,
it's so funny watching the combine and the crowd's like, yeah, and you're like, what did he do? And you realize he just went to Purdue.
Then we have Jeremy taking Ben Sinnott as low as he's gone in one of our drafts. That's a nice value. Todd takes Jalen Polk. We have Malik Washington, who's also gaining some steam. And I believe SC got autoed here for Estime, who died a pretty quick death after his combine performance. Anything that stands out here, guys? What do you think?
We've seen a Notre Dame back die at the combine only to live again in the past.
Kyron Williams.
I'll go through just a couple picks I like. I like being positive here. Arrow push with Roman Wilson. After reading what JJ Zacharyson has to say about Roman Wilson, and now I'm back in on him. Basically, if we're gonna give the benefit of the doubt to JJ McCarthy. And if we're going to look at Nico Collins, who did jack at Michigan because of the ground and pound game, like his stats were not good. Nico Collins at Michigan win the third round, and then now he's awesome. Roman Wilson, I believe, should get the benefit of the doubt as well. Should he not? As a Michigan guy. I love the Javon Baker one there. Derek Brown has me sold on him, and I'm a sucker for contested catches. And I love your Jermaine Burton pick. And I will say this about Jermaine Burton, that when I look at guys that fall to day 3, if Jermaine Burton slides in the draft, I will be willing to take a stab on him because he has well-documented character issues, which when you look at the guys, the day 3 picks, there are very few legitimate Amon-Ra St. Browns and Puka Nakuas that just kind of fall for no reason. And there's arguments to be made that Amon-Ra St. Brown fell because his dad is crazy and makes these kids eat meatballs.
No. 100. What do we got? AB, we've got Tyreek, all day 3 guys who popped with character concerns.
AB, Tyreek, Stephon Diggs got suspended. He had injury issues. Julian Edelman was a quarterback in college. Pierre Garcon was he went to Mount Union. He was like a JUCO guy, right? Like when you start looking at the guys that actually do break out from that range, there's usually a reason. So if Jermaine Burton slides because he's a jerk, well, I'd rather a guy slide because he's a jerk than have a guy slide because he's a special team. So I'll take shots at those type guys all day.
I like it. The third round board here is a little different. I wish we could still see down here who was left because I feel like there's a lot of guys who normally someone normally takes Bucky, but you got it?
Yeah, I got you on that. So Tez Walker didn't go, Bucky, Jacob Cowing, Brendan Rice, Will Shipley, Luke McCaffrey, the Albatross, Johnny Wilson, and then that's probably about it. Theo Johnson, Cade Stover, if you care, Spencer Rattler. Yeah, that's about it.
So I'll take stabs on, again, you want something where after the draft, you look at it and you say, okay, give me some unique upside, like Justin Ross, right? Like, if you're taking if we're doing a 4th round here, I'll take Johnny Wilson. You know what I mean? Like, what if he does convert to tight end against his wishes, right? Like now the barrier to entry at tight end is a lot lower, right? Like, what if, some of the other names that you threw out there, I'll say this, like, you can create a narrative for yourself. Brendan Rice, nobody has a better support group than Brendan Rice.
Jerry.
Right? Right. Well, you look at Larry Fitzgerald, who grew up, his dad was a beat writer, and he grew up around Chris Carter and Randy Moss. And he wasn't, obviously he was a freakazoid, but like he grew up around that and did things the right way. And again, same with Marvin Harrison Jr. is like the safety net on these guys. There's something to be said for that. Christian McCaffrey, his father and McCaffrey still involved in the league. Like, there's not going to be a situation where like, we can't reach so-and-so because he's off in Vegas pulling a Dennis Rodman or he's doing, you know what I mean? Like, Jerry Rice will slap him upside the head if, you know what I mean? Like there's something to be said for that. Teams appreciate that,
I think we're going to see Jacob Cowing, whatever you want to say. He's going to go a lot higher than he would have here. If for no other reason than you can't mention his name without hearing that he's Tank Dell 2.0.
Yeah.
I know.
I don't. You're small. Yeah. Well, no,
but we didn't want that last year. Nobody wanted Tank Dell last year just because he kind of hit. Now we're targeting Tank Dell. Like, what the hell?
The league has changed. The league has changed. That's true. The way you can hit these guys, the way you can tackle these guys has changed. And that's why, we're seeing more. There's always going to be a need for big split ends that can beat the press coverage in the jam. You're always going to have the Michael Pittmans and the Mike Evanses. And if those guys grew on trees, then, this would be a lot easier. But, like, with the new rules, Devonta Smith isn't getting, he's not getting hurt every play. You know what I mean? Like people said he was going to. Like, where is that? Like, everyone said this guy was going to not succeed and he's going to get hurt. All I see is 1,000-yard seasons. So, there's something to be said. There's something to be said about it.
You got a team that you really liked here, Jeremy, before we close it out?
Mine, of course. I really like my guys. No, but I just
wanted to shout out me. Couldn't none of this could have been possible without me.
I just wanted to bring up the running backs here in the 3rd round because we got a lot of big bodies, Tracy excluded, but Braylon Allen and Estime to me are 2 guys who I don't really know, how to feel about in this process because Coop, you were just talking about the fact that the league has changed. I don't know if there's room for these guys who are these big bodied backs, these AJ Dillon types who look like Tarzan and play like Jane, right? They're just a little too soft for their size. Estime is running through guys, but you need that combination of speed and power. And I don't necessarily see it from either of these guys. And I worry that regardless of where they go, they're just going to slot into a AJ Dillon type production and just be useless for fantasy.
Yeah, it's very difficult to the Derrick Henry might be the last of a dying breed as like the true plotter, doesn't catch balls back to be an every down awesome player, right? It's like we watched Donta Foreman not be able to catch on, and Philip Lindsay, even as a smaller guy, like he just because he couldn't do pass downs, Damian Pierce and Tyler Algier and these guys, like, man, I can't say anything bad about Braylon Allen because Pat Fitzmaurice and the Wisconsin fans will come for me, right? But yeah, he was upset when I called him Ron Dane. But yeah, but like he does run a lot like Brandon Jacobs, very upright, and I think that as part of the split backfield, he can have a role, right? But in the modern NFL and what we do for fantasy football, Scott Barrett already proved that in every format, even standard, a target, not even a reception, but a target is more valuable than a carry. So those guys worry me a little bit. I mean, so I'm with you on that it's very difficult but if he's just a super, if he can prove that he can catch it, like that's the thing. We were worried about Jonathan Taylor's ability to catch it. It turns out, who cares?
Yeah.
All right, Coop. Well, thanks for joining us. It was great having you. You want to take another shot here? Tell everyone what it is you're doing and where they can find you.
For sure. So I am over at Fantasy Alarm. You catch me on Sirius XM every once in a while. Draft day, especially, I'll be on. All my articles over at Fantasy Alarm. Most of my general articles are free. But this week coming up, I put together a best ball draft guide for everybody that wants to get into drafts. And I'm going to update it after the NFL draft and again over the summer. But it's got all my rankings. It's got my top 5 targets in each position. It's got 10 sleepers, 10 busts, 10 rookies, and then just all the little things you need, like just like a little thing that breaks down how many quarterbacks you need, how many running backs you need. So anybody just getting into best ball, you take this guide, and it's just a quick PDF. You can do the whole thing, and it can take somebody that's never done it before, and you can win leagues with it. So that's going up on Fantasy Line. That's what I got going on.
Awesome. Well, everyone, thank you for tuning into the Fantasy Football Universe. Like I said, we kind of just, transition from our other sites to start our own here. So we appreciate the follow anywhere. YouTube, not that you can watch this on YouTube because I guess it's down. Facebook, Twitter, anywhere. Head over to our website. We appreciate the subs, the likes, the comments. We're not one of the bigger sites, so you can pretty much guarantee that anytime you post a comment, we will respond. It will not always be a nice response, but you will get a response. Depends on. Yes. Thank you. So, all right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us, Coop, and thank you all for tuning in. Take care, and we'll catch you next time.